Well, hey, everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News TV. And on today's news brief, we're going to take a look at H5N1 avian influenza in the state of Texas. So, one week ago, we heard of various health officials investigating an illness among primarily older dairy cows in Texas, Kansas, and New Mexico that was causing decreased lactation, low appetite, and other symptoms. Now, as of last Monday, March 25th, unpasteurized clinical samples of milk from sick cattle collected from two dairy farms in Kansas and one in Texas, as well as an oropharyngeal swab from another dairy in Texas, tested positive for highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI. Additional testing was initiated on Friday, March 22nd. And over the weekend, because farms have also reported finding decreased wild birds on their properties. Based on findings from Texas, the detections appear to have been introduced by wild birds. Initial testing by the National Veterinary Services Laboratories has not found changes to the virus that would make it more transmissible to humans, which would indicate that the current risk to the public remains low. Then on Thursday, the USDA's National Veterinary Services Laboratory confirmed the presence of HPAI in a Michigan dairy that had recently received cows from Texas. Presumptive positive test results have also been received from additional herds in New Mexico, Idaho, and Texas. Now, the NVSL has also confirmed that the strain of the virus found in Michigan is very similar to the strain confirmed in Texas and Kansas that appears to have been introduced by wild birds. Initial testing has not found changes to the virus that would make it more transmissible. While cases among humans in direct contact with infected animals are possible, and we'll come back to that, this indicates that a current risk to the public health remains low. Spread of symptoms among the Michigan herd also indicate that HPAI transmission between cattle could not be ruled out. The American Veterinary Medical Association, the AVMA, said these findings mark the first time that HPAI has been detected in dairy cattle and the second time the virus has been detected in a ruminant. And as I mentioned earlier, the Idaho Department of Agriculture identify highly pathogenic avian influenza in Cassia County dairy cattle operation. These are the first cases of HPAI in livestock operation in Idaho. The affected facility recently imported cattle from another state that has identified cases of HPAI in cattle, which suggests the virus may be transmitted from cow to cow, in addition to previous reports indicating cattle were acquiring the virus from infected birds. So let's talk a little bit about avian influenza. Influenza viruses are broadly divided into three types: A, B, and C. Type A influenza includes most human and all avian influenza viruses. Avian influenza viruses are divided into subtypes based on a combination of two proteins found on the virus's surface: hemagglutinin, or H, which has 16 recognized types, H1 through H16, and neuraminidase, or the N, which has 9, N1 through N9. Various strains of subtypes have been identified, and these strains are grouped into two broad categories based on their ability to cause disease in poultry: the low pathogenic avian influenza, the LPAI, and the high pathogenic avian influenza, the HPAI. The H5 and the H7 strains are the most common HPAI viruses found in nature. This said, not all H5 and H7 influenza viruses are highly pathogenic. Likewise, other strains that are not H5 or H7 can also be considered highly pathogenic in certain circumstances. Avian influenza appears periodically all over the world, including in the United States. The virus spreads easily among wild and migratory aquatic birds, with waterfowl and shorebirds considered natural hosts or reservoirs. Certain virus strains also can infect domesticated birds, including chickens and turkeys and ducks, and very rarely pet birds. Humans rarely, and a variety of other mammals, both wild and domestic. The majority of human cases of avian influenza have resulted from direct contact with infected poultry. In the United States, most outbreaks of avian influenza have been associated with LPAI strains. These strains may cause mild disease in poultry. However, outbreaks also have occurred involving HPAI strains. These strains, many which are harmless in wild birds, can cause severe disease and death in poultry. HPAI can rapidly devastate entire flocks, resulting in major economic losses, and can potentially infect people and other animal species. Okay, and this comes to the crux of the whole story. Today, the Texas Department of State Health Services is reporting the first human case of novel avian influenza A H5N1 in Texas. The patient became ill following contact with dairy cows, presumed to be infected with avian influenza. The patient's primary symptom was conjunctivitis. This is the second case of avian influenza A H5N1 identified in a person in the US, and is believed to be associated with the recent detections of avian influenza H5N1 in dairy cows, announced by the Texas Animal Health Commission. Avian influenza A, or H5N1 viruses, have only rarely been transmitted from person to person. As such, the risk to the general public is believed to be low. However, people with close contact with affected animals suspected of having this strain of avian influenza have a higher risk of infection. Texas state health officials issued this health alert to provide awareness to healthcare providers and to ask them to be vigilant for people with signs and symptoms of avian influenza H5N1. Suspicion for avian influenza H5N1 should be heightened for people who have had contact with animals suspected of being infected. And as I said, this is the second person reported to have tested positive for this virus in the US. The previous one was reported in 2022 in Colorado. Now, this health alert issued by the Texas Health Department was followed by an email press release by the CDC that came out this afternoon. And they said that the patient would, they repeat a lot of the things that Texas has said, but they said the patient was told to isolate and is being treated with an antiviral drug for flu. This infection does not change the H5N1 bird flu human health risk assessment in the US, which the CDC considers to be low. However, people with close or prolonged contact, unprotected exposures to infected birds or other animals, including livestock in this case, or to environments contaminated by infected birds or other animals, are at a greater risk of infection. Now, the CDC offered the following recommendations for prevention. People should avoid unprotected exposures to sick or dead animals, including wild birds, poultry, other domesticated birds, and other wild or domesticated animals, including cattle, as well as with animal carcasses, raw milk, feces, litter, or materials contaminated by birds or other animals with confirmed or suspected um, highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N1 virus infection. People should not prepare or eat uncooked or undercooked food or related uncooked food products, such as unpasteurized or raw milk, or products made from raw milk, such as cheeses from animals with confirmed or suspected H5N1 infection. Specific recommendations for farmers, poultry, backyard flock, and livestock owners, and worker protection is also available on the CDC website. People exposed to birds or other animals with confirmed or suspected HPAI H5N1 virus should be monitored for any signs and symptoms of illness for 10 days after the last known exposure, including people wearing recommended personal protective equipment or PPE. And the FDA and the USDA said there are not concerns with the safety of commercial milk supply at this time because products are pasteurized before entering the market. So it's been a roller coaster ride for the past week with H5N1 in the US being found in dairy cattle, and now the first case of human infection in Texas, and the second case total in the US. So, yeah, that's the big story today. You probably heard about it 100 times, but you just heard about it again. And I appreciate you watching. And if you like this channel, subscribe to it. Like the video, comment below, share with your friends, and I'll see you next time on Outbreak News TV.